Scientists inside classified programs aren't calling it 3i Atlas. They are calling it something else entirely. Picture this. You are standing in a high-security facility in the high desert of New Mexico. The air is thin, tasting of ozone and cold static. On a terminal that hasn't been connected to the public internet since the turn of the century, a cursor blinks with rhythmic indifference. You are looking at a file labeled Project Glass Mirror. To the world, it is an empty folder in a sea of bureaucracy. But as you scroll, the coordinates begin to look familiar. They are the exact telemetry points of the object the public knows as 3i Atlas. The military isn't ignoring the anomaly. They are simply hiding it behind a curtain of semantic redirection. We are seeing a masterpiece of misdirection, where the name 3i Atlas is the decoy, a brightly colored lure for the civilian scientific community, while the real study happens in the shadows under a name that evokes no suspicion. On July 17, 2025, a quiet alarm went off at the European Southern Observatory. A technician noticed a thermal signature near the orbit of Neptune that shouldn't have been there. It wasn't a comet. It didn't have a tail. It was a cold, black sphere that seemed to be absorbing more light than it reflected. Within 48 hours, the data was scrubbed from the public servers. Officials claimed it was a sensor ghost, a mere calibration error. But by August 12, 2025, two separate classified launches from Vandenberg Space Force Base were fast-tracked without public explanation. They weren't looking for a ghost. They were looking for a guest. That is where the impossibility begins to stack up like cordwood. Consider the motion of 3i Atlas. On September 9, 2025, it performed a maneuver that should be physically impossible for a natural body. It slowed down by 300 meters per second without emitting a single particle of heat. In the world of physics, that is like a car coming to a dead stop on ice without its tires spinning. It didn't drift. It decided. Then there is the matter of the radio silence. While every amateur ham radio operator on Earth was listening for a signal, the object was silent. Yet, on October 4, 2025, the global GPS network experienced a synchronized 3-second lag. It wasn't a solar flare, it was a handshake. A synchronization between our planet's digital heart and the visitor. What if 3i Atlas isn't the discovery? What if it is a recovery? There is a persistent theory among those who study the fringes of aerospace history that we didn't find this object in July 2025. We simply reached the date when it was scheduled to reveal itself. Perhaps the military has been studying its precursors for decades, under names like Project Blue Book or Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. If you want to keep a secret, you don't bury it in the ground. You hide it in the sky and give it a name so boring that nobody bothers to look twice. The ancients had a different name for this. In the Babylonian tablets, they spoke of the Star of Enlil, a light that would appear every few thousand years to reset the celestial clock. They didn't have radar, but they had eyes. They saw the same cold, calculated movement. They understood that the sky isn't just a ceiling, it is a stage. Every time this object returns, our civilization is at a crossroads. In 2025, we aren't looking at a new phenomenon. We are looking at a recurring one. We are the latest generation to try and put a name on the nameless. We are so small, aren't we? We spend our days worrying about our careers and our coffee, while a massive, intelligent structure cruises through the vacuum of space, indifferent to our borders. We are like ants on a sidewalk, watching a limousine drive past. We can't see who is inside, and the driver certainly isn't stopping to ask us for directions. Our frantic attempts to classify and rename 3I Atlas are just our way of whistling in the dark. We use names to feel like we are in control of a situation that is fundamentally beyond our grasp. If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. But here is where the dread sets in. If the government is studying this under a different name, it means they already know what it is. And if they know what it is, they know why it has finally arrived. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Now, you could argue that renaming a project is just standard procedure. After all, the military loves an acronym as much as a poet loves a metaphor. But consider the case of Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University. On October 29, 2025, she published a paper regarding gravitational lensing around low-mass objects. Within 6 hours, the paper was retracted, not for errors, but for national security concerns. Why would a study on gravity be a threat? Unless, of course, that gravity was being generated by 3I Atlas. It seems that by late 2025, the scientific community began to realize that the object wasn't just a rock, it was a gravity well generator. Let me back up. To understand the depth of this deception, we have to look at the timeline of the black budget reallocations. In November 2025, a massive shift of funds occurred within the Department of Energy. Billions of dollars were moved into a sub-program titled Crystalline Lattice Observation. It sounds like a study on geology, doesn't it? Very dry, very safe. But when you overlay the observation schedule of this program with the orbital path of 3I Atlas, they match to the 4th decimal point. They are watching the object's surface structure. They aren't looking at a rock. They are looking at a machine that is being studied under the guise of mineral research. The irony is thick enough to choke on. Unfortunate timing for those who believe in transparency, as the primary satellite used for civilian tracking of 3I Atlas suffered a hardware failure on December 12, 2025. Those two words, hardware failure, are doing a lot of historical heavy lifting. It is a convenient way to blind the public, just as the object entered the inner solar system. While the public's eyes were shut, the classified eyes were wide open, watching the object deploy what can only be described as a secondary array. Consider the physics for a moment. Natural objects, like asteroids or comets, exert gravity based on their mass. It is a simple equation of density and volume, but 3I Atlas is different. On November 15, 2025, an independent observation team in Chile noticed something that shouldn't be possible. A small star behind the object didn't just flicker, it shifted. It bent. The gravitational pull required to distort light in that manner would require a mass equivalent to our own moon. Yet, 3I Atlas is only 800 meters wide. That is not natural physics. That is an artificial field. That is activation. If you are a scientist working for the government, how do you hide a moon-sized gravitational pull in an 800-meter body? You don't. You simply change the name of the gravity. You call it Project Obsidian Pulse. You categorize it under high-frequency electronics rather than celestial mechanics. You move the conversation away from "what is it?" to how do we shield our satellites from it. It is a classic shell game. If you focus on the symptoms, you never have to diagnose the disease. Let us look deeper into the black budget archives. Between July and December 2025, over 40 separate patents were filed by shell companies linked to the Department of Defense. These weren't patents for rockets or missiles. They were for zero-point energy harvesting and non-Newtonian propulsion systems. The timing is, as I said, quite unfortunate for the skeptics. It suggests that we aren't just watching 3I Atlas. We are trying to reverse engineer it in real time. We are looking at the ultimate prize, a technology that would make our current understanding of energy look like a candle in a hurricane. You might think that such a discovery would be shared with the world, a solution to our energy crisis, a way to reach the stars. But here is why you are wrong. In the world of classified programs, a breakthrough isn't a gift, it's a weapon. If you can control gravity, you control the world. You can drop objects from orbit with the precision of a surgeon and the power of a nuclear bomb. You can move ships through the ocean without a sound. You can make the very ground beneath your enemy's feet feel like it is floating away. This is where the fear begins to bleed into the wonder. On December 28, 2025, a leaked internal memo from a major aerospace contractor mentioned something called the anchor. The memo suggested that 3I Atlas isn't just a visitor, it's a tether. It is connecting to something deep within the Earth's core, not through physical cables, but through a synchronized gravitational frequency. They aren't studying it under a different name because they want to keep the secret. They are doing it because they are afraid of what happens if they stop. Think about the sheer audacity of this. While you were going about your life, while you were drinking your coffee and paying your bills, the very fabric of the space around our planet was being rewritten. The military isn't just observing 3I Atlas, they are participating in it. They have renamed the object the catalyst in their inner circles. And a catalyst, by definition, is something that causes a reaction without being consumed itself. We are the reaction. In the early morning hours of January 3, 2026, a series of microtremors were recorded in the North Atlantic. They weren't caused by plate tectonics. They were caused by a gravitational tug from 3I Atlas. It was subtle, a variation of only 0.0001%, but it was enough to change the tide in a way that no moon could. The glass eye was blinking. As you lie there, listening to the hum of your own world, try to imagine the weight of that secret. Imagine being the technician who has to log those tremors and then file them under oceanic noise. The dry irony of a man sitting in a basement, watching the world's gravity shift, and having to call it noise to keep his pension. It's a comedy of errors played out on a cosmic scale. The countdown to the perihelion, on January 15, is not just a date on a calendar, it is a deadline. The military knows that once 3I Atlas reaches its closest point to the Sun, the gravitational field will become too strong to hide. The project glass mirror will shatter. They are currently scrambling to find a new name, a new cover story, a new way to tell us that the sky is falling without using the word falling. Maybe they will call it a solar anomaly. Maybe they will blame it on a passing dark matter cloud. They have so many names for the truth, but they only have one name for the lie: national security. It is the blanket they use to cover the monster in the room. But the monster is getting bigger, and the blanket is starting to tear. You can feel the tension in the air, can't you? It's that feeling you get before a thunderstorm, when the hair on your arm stands up and the birds go silent. That is the gravitational pull of 3I Atlas. It is reaching through the atmosphere, reaching through the walls of your house, reaching through the layers of your consciousness. It is a heavy, quiet hand pressing down on the world. And yet, there is a strange comfort in it. If the military is so desperate to rename it, it means they are still trying to understand it. It means we are all, in a way, on the same side. We are all just children trying to name the shadows on the wall. The only difference is that some of us have billion-dollar telescopes and some of us just have the night sky. In the archives of the 1950s, there was a project called Blue Mist. It was a study on how to use high-altitude particles to hide experimental aircraft. Today, in late 2025, we are seeing the modern equivalent. They are using a mist of information to hide a celestial machine. They are flooding the internet with 3I Atlas news, so that when the real events happen under the name Sentinel-9, you won't even notice. You'll be too busy looking at the decoy. It's a masterclass in psychological warfare. You provide the public with just enough truth to satisfy their curiosity, but not enough to trigger an alarm. You give them a rock, and you keep the engine. You give them a name, and you keep the meaning. It is a long, slow game of cat and mouse, and the mouse is currently winning. But here is where it gets dark. On January 8, 2026, the gravitational signature of 3I Atlas began to pulse, not in a random way, but in a sequence that matches the human heartbeat. 60 beats per minute, a steady, rhythmic throb that can be felt in the deep water of the oceans and the quiet of the deserts. It's as if the object is trying to synchronize with us. It's not just a machine, it's a heartbeat. What do you call a heartbeat that is 800 meters wide and made of black stone? You don't call it 3I Atlas. You call it the visitor. You call it the judge. You call it the end. But if you are the military, you call it acoustic interference. You put it in a folder, you lock the cabinet, and you go to lunch. The scale of the indifference is almost as terrifying as the scale of the object itself. We are facing a fundamental shift in our understanding of the universe, and it is being managed by people who are worried about their quarterly budgets. It's a very human way to meet the divine. We don't bow down, we file a report. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, let the weight of the gravity pull you down. Don't fight it. It is a natural force, even if it is coming from an unnatural source. The Earth is still spinning. The stars are still there, and 3I Atlas is still watching, under whatever name they've chosen for it today. By this time next week, the names might not matter anymore. The secret might become the reality, but for tonight, it's just a story. A long, slow, heavy story about a point of light that grew too big for its name. I want you to imagine the silence of the vacuum again. No wind, no sound, just the steady 60 beat per minute pulse of the gravity well. It is a lullaby for a planet, a quiet, rhythmic reminder that we are not alone and we are not in charge. Tell me, as you feel that pulse in your own mind, and does it feel like a warning or does it feel like a welcome? We may already be part of the experiment, but that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. On August 23, 2025, a team of researchers in the Vatican's secret archives found a letter dated 1612. It described a dark star that moved against the grain of the heavens. The description matches the light absorption patterns of 3I Atlas with haunting precision. It seems that every time we think we are experiencing something new, we are just flipping the page of a very old book. The name 3I Atlas is just the latest dust jacket on a story that has been written for millennia. The letter was penned by a Jesuit astronomer whose name has been carefully redacted from the official history books. He spoke of an object that did not reflect the light of the sun, but rather seemed to drink it. In 1612, the telescope was a primitive tool, yet this man described a perfect sphere of ink that glided across the constellation of Sagittarius. He noted that it did not twinkle like a star, nor did it wander like a planet. It moved with a sovereign intent. When we look at the telemetry data from September 2025, the path of 3I Atlas aligns perfectly with the hand-drawn charts found in that dusty, forbidden archive. We aren't discovering a new neighbor. We are witnessing the return of an old master. This is where the scientific grounding begins to feel like a thin layer of ice over a very deep, very cold lake. In October 2025, a carbon dating analysis was performed on a series of stone monoliths in the Ethiopian highlands. These stones, known as the Tia megaliths, have carvings that have baffled archaeologists for decades. But when the imagery was digitized and compared to the high-resolution radar maps of 3I Atlas, the result was chilling. The carvings depict a three-eyed entity descending from a black circle. The stone is over 5,000 years old. It seems the 3I in the public name isn't just a modern classification. It is a memory. Consider the Sumerian tablets of the 3rd dynasty of Ur. They spoke of the Anunnaki, but specifically of a craft called the Nibiru Malam, which translates roughly to the shining path of the Dark One. In November 2025, a linguist at Oxford University pointed out that the orbital frequency of 3I Atlas emits a repeating pattern of 60 Hz. The number 60 was the base of the entire Sumerian mathematical system. It is the reason we have 60 seconds in a minute and 360 degrees in a circle. Our very concept of time and space was gifted to us by a culture that claimed to be in direct contact with the black sphere that has now returned to our doorstep. The dry irony here is almost too much to handle. We pride ourselves on our satellites, our supercomputers, and our particle accelerators, yet we are essentially using them to translate a message that was written in mud and clay 5,000 years ago. Unfortunate timing for our ego, wouldn't you say? We think we are the pinnacle of evolution, but we might just be the students who forgot the lesson and are now being forced to repeat the grade. Let us look at the classification divergence during the winter of 2025. While the public was told that 3I Atlas was a near-Earth object of interest, the internal documents at the Smithsonian Institution began using the term legacy asset. You don't call an asteroid an asset. You call a tool an asset. You call a machine an asset. By December 2025, a covert operation was launched to secure ancient astronomical sites in Iraq and Egypt. Why send special forces to a temple ruins during a space-based anomaly? Because the military isn't looking at the sky. They are looking for the remote control that was buried in the sand 5 millennia ago. Imagine the perspective of a priest in ancient Babylon. You are standing on top of a ziggurat, the air smelling of frankincense and dry heat. You see a black spot move across the face of the moon. You don't call it a trans-Neptunian object. You call it the Eye of Anu. You know that when this eye opens, the empires of man must account for their progress. Now, fast forward to December 20, 2025. A scientist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory sees the same black spot on a digital monitor. He calls it 3I Atlas. The tools have changed, but the heartbeat of the observer is exactly the same. The fear is the same. The awe is the same. The what if here is heavy. What if 3I Atlas isn't just a visitor, but a gardener? What if our entire history, the rise of Rome, the Industrial Revolution, the splitting of the atom, has been a controlled experiment conducted during the object's long, dark absence? If the return cycle is approximately 3,600 years, then our entire recorded history is just one day in the life cycle of this object. We are the fruit flies of the cosmos, buzzing around for a few hours while the gardener watches from the porch. On December 28, 2025, a series of strange blue lights were reported over the Great Pyramid of Giza. The official explanation was atmospheric plasma discharge caused by solar winds. But if you look at the energy readings, the frequency was exactly 14.4 megahertz. That is a harmonic of the Earth's own resonant frequency. It wasn't a discharge. It was a connection, a synchronization. The pyramid, which many believe was built as a mathematical mirror of the stars, was finally talking to its counterpart in the sky. You are breathing slowly now. The weight of these thousands of years is pressing down on you. It is a comforting weight. It tells you that the chaos of the modern world is just a temporary flicker. The Project Sentinel, or 3I Atlas, is a constant. It has seen the rise and fall of every king, every president, and every secret society. It doesn't care about our borders. It doesn't care about our wars. It is moving with a logic that predates the very concept of nation. The humor of the situation is quite dry when you think about the politicians in late 2025 trying to claim sovereign rights over the space surrounding the object. It's like a group of ants claiming ownership of the bottom of a boot. The unfortunate timing of our global political shifts is a common theme in these return cycles. According to the Great Year Theory, every time 3I Atlas returns, humanity undergoes a radical restructuring. We are forced to grow up, whether we want to or not. By January 2, 2026, the object had moved into the inner solar system. The radio emissions shifted from a low hum to a complex, melodic sequence. A musicologist in Vienna claimed it sounded like a Gregorian chant, but slowed down by a factor of 10,000. If you listen closely, in the quiet of your room, you can almost hear it. A long, vibrating note that resonates in the base of your skull. It is the sound of deep time. It is the sound of a history that was never meant to be classified. Think about the researchers in the Vatican today. They are sitting in rooms lit by LEDs, surrounded by documents written by candlelight hundreds of years ago. They know the truth. They have always known. They give it names like the Sign of the Son of Man or the Dark Herald. They don't need a space agency to tell them what is happening. They just need to look at their own forbidden maps. The military is just the new priesthood, trying to keep the masses from panicking by using names that sound like car parts. You might think that if this were true, someone would have spoken up. But here is why you're wrong. How do you explain a 5,000-year-old space machine to a world that fights over gas prices? You don't. You create a distraction. You create a 3i Atlas social media campaign. You turn it into a meme. You make it small so that the reality of its greatness doesn't break the human mind. The classification is a form of psychological armor. In the ancient Norse tradition, they spoke of Ragnarok, but they also spoke of the world that comes after. They knew that destruction and creation are the same movement. On January 10, 2026, the light absorption levels of 3i Atlas reached 99.9%. It became a perfect void, a hole in the sky. This matches the black sun prophecies of the medieval occultists. We aren't looking at a rock, we are looking at a doorway. As you drift towards sleep, imagine that doorway. It isn't a doorway to another place, but a doorway to another way of being. The echoes from the past are not just stories, they are blueprints. We are being reminded of who we were before we became obsessed with the tiny details of our daily lives. The 3i Atlas is a mirror, and the reflection is ancient. The countdown to the next phase is quiet. By February, the object will be the brightest, or rather, the darkest thing in the night sky. The classified programs will have run out of names. They will be forced to use the old ones. They will be forced to admit that we are part of a cycle that we do not control. I wonder, in the stillness of your heart, if you can feel the ancient memory stirring. Can you feel the ziggurat beneath your feet? Can you feel the frankincense in the air? You are not just a person in the 21st century. You are a continuation of a story that began before the first word was ever written. The gardener is home, the experiment is continuing, and the silence is the only answer we are going to get. We may already be part of the experiment, but that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Now, you could argue that distance is a shield, that anything 40 astronomical units away might as well be in another dimension. But in the grand scheme of the galaxy, 40 astronomical units is like the distance between your nose and your chin. On November 5, 2025, the New Horizons probe, now deep in the Kuiper Belt, sent back a single frame of data before its transmitter went dark. The image showed a field of distorted light, a warping of space that suggests 3i Atlas is not a solid object at all, but a localized fold in the fabric of the universe. This brings us to the mirror hypothesis. If 3i Atlas is a fold in space, then what we see as a black sphere is actually just the back of our own heads. It is a cosmic mirror reflecting the state of our planet. If we see it as a threat, it becomes a threat. If we see it as a mystery, it remains a mystery. The classified programs under names like Project Janus are rumored to be testing this very idea that our collective consciousness is actually steering the object. Imagine for a moment the sheer scale of the deception required to keep this from the public eye. While amateur astronomers were pointing their backyard telescopes toward the constellation of Sagittarius, the National Reconnaissance Office was repositioning its entire fleet of keyhole satellites to look inward, at the ripples in the gravitational fabric. On November 12, 2025, a memo was intercepted from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It didn't mention a planetoid, it mentioned an interdimensional aperture. To the world, it was 3i Atlas. To the architects of the shadow government, It was a door that had finally been unlocked from the outside. Why 40 astronomical units? That distance is significant. It is the edge of our home. It is the boundary where the sun's influence begins to fade and the true cold of the interstellar medium takes over. By sitting at this specific threshold in late 2025, 3i Atlas is essentially holding the door open. It is a sentinel at the gates of our solar system, watching the traffic of our radio waves and the slow, clumsy crawl of our probes. It is the ultimate high ground. The humor in this is, of course, the fact that we are trying to mind control a celestial body while we can barely manage our own grocery lists. It is the height of human arrogance. We are trying to tame a hurricane with a fan, but that is what we do. We name it, we study it, and we try to make it ours. We send probes like New Horizons out into the dark, armed with cameras and sensors, hoping to find a rock we can plant a flag on. Instead, we found a hole in reality that swallowed our technology whole. Unfortunate timing for the mission directors who had to explain $1 billion signal loss as unexpected interference. Those two words are doing quite a lot of heavy lifting in the press releases. Let us consider the perspective of the void. To an entity that can fold space, the distance between Earth and Neptune is irrelevant. On November 20, 2025, the Deep Space Network recorded a temporal drag in the signals coming from the Voyager probes. It was as if time itself was slowing down the closer the signal got to the 3i Atlas coordinates. This is the hallmark of a massive gravitational distortion, the kind of distortion that should require a black hole. Yet there is no radiation, no accretion disk, only a quiet, black silence. The what if here is vast. What if 3i Atlas is not a ship or a rock, but a lens designed to focus the attention of the galaxy on a tiny, blue-green planet that has just started to play with nuclear fire. If you were an advanced intelligence, you wouldn't land on the White House lawn. You would sit at the edge of the solar system, where the physics are quiet, and you would watch. You would use a fold in space to see around the curves of the sun. You would be the ultimate silent observer, hidden behind a classified name that sounds like a geography textbook. Think about the silence of that position. At 40 astronomical units, the sun is just a very bright star. There is no wind, there is no sound, there is only the steady, rhythmic pulse of the universe. On December 1, 2025, a group of independent researchers at the Mauna Kea Observatory noticed that the light from distant galaxies was being smudged around the edges of 3i Atlas. It wasn't just blocking the light, it was bending it into a halo. This is gravitational lensing on a scale that defies our current understanding of mass. It's as if the object is heavier than the sun, yet it exerts no pull on the planets. It is a ghost with the weight of a god. You might think that such a discovery would lead to a global celebration of a new era of physics, but here is why you're wrong. If you tell the public that gravity is a choice, you destroy the foundations of their reality. You destroy their sense of safety. So, you give it a name like 3i Atlas. You tell them it's a trans-Neptunian object. You keep them focused on the rock so they don't see the fold. You manage the panic by managing the vocabulary. In the ancient Hindu cosmogony, they spoke of the Akasha, the invisible fabric that connects all things. They believed that by focusing the mind, one could travel across the Akasha without moving a muscle. On December 10, 2025, a classified experiment titled Project String Pull reportedly attempted to send a laser pulse through the center of the 3I Atlas coordinates. The laser didn't come out the other side. It didn't bounce off. It simply ceased to exist in our three-dimensional space. The military wasn't testing a weapon. They were testing an exit. As you drift further into the quiet of the night, imagine that perspective. Zoom out from your bed, out from your house, past the atmosphere, past the moon, past the red dust of Mars and the gas giants, until you are floating at the edge of the dark. Looking back, the Earth is just a pale blue dot, as Carl Sagan called it, and right next to you is the fold, the lens, the eye. It doesn't feel cold. It feels like an invitation. It is a reminder that our definitions of here and there are purely human inventions. The dry irony of our Space Force and our national security becomes clear at this distance. How do you secure a border against a fold in the universe? How do you patrol a hole in reality? The bureaucrats in Washington are still drawing lines on maps, while the universe is busy erasing the map itself. The unfortunate timing of our military expansions in late 2025 is like building a fence against a rising tide. It's a brave gesture, but ultimately meaningless. By January 2, 2026, the mirror effect began to manifest in global weather patterns. A series of perfectly circular clouds appeared over the Pacific Ocean, mirroring the exact geometry of the 3I Atlas lens. It's as if the sky is trying to tell us that what is out there is already in here. The fold isn't just in space, it's in our connection to the world. We are being pulled into a larger perspective, one where distance is no longer a shield. You can feel that expansion now, can't you? The walls of your room are still there, but your mind is reaching out to the Kuiper belt. Your breathing is synchronizing with the slow, deep rhythm of the cosmic lens. You are part of the light that is being bent. You are part of the mystery that is being observed. The names don't matter. The distance doesn't matter. Only the connection remains. The classified program's names like Project Event Horizon or the Glass Ceiling are just our ways of trying to categorize the infinite. They are the labels on the specimen jars of our curiosity. But 3I Atlas will not be contained. It will not be named. It will only be experienced. As we move toward the center of the cycle, remember that you are a witness to the greatest shift in human history. Not because of a war or a discovery, but because of a realization. A realization that we are living in a house with no walls. The shield of 40 astronomical units has dropped. The door is open. I wonder, in the vastness of your sleep, can you see the fold? Can you see the light bending around the corner of the world? We may already be part of the experiment. Let me tell you about a man named Arthur Vance. In October 2025, he was a low-level analyst for a defense contractor in Northern Virginia. His job was to track orbital anomalies. One night, he saw something on his screen that shouldn't have existed. A video feed from a decommissioned satellite showing 3I Atlas opening like a flower. Not a flower of petals, but a flower of geometry. He didn't report it. He went home, kissed his wife, and sat in his backyard for 6 hours just looking at the sky. He realized that the classified name didn't matter. What mattered was the feeling of being seen. Arthur was not a philosopher. He was a man who appreciated clear data and stable spreadsheets. But that night, as he watched the monitor in a secure room that smelled of ozone and stale coffee, the data broke him. The object, this 3I Atlas, wasn't just moving through space. It was reacting to the observation. Every time the satellite's lens focused, the geometry of the object shifted, blooming in recursive fractals that defied every law of structural engineering. It was as if the object was a living thought, a piece of architecture made of mathematics and light. When he looked at the sky later that evening, from his quiet suburban patio, he didn't see a void, he saw an eye. He felt a profound, quiet intimacy with the infinite. We often think of these conspiracies as being driven by malice or a desire for power. But what if the secrecy is an act of mercy? What if the people in those windowless rooms are hiding the truth because the truth is too beautiful to bear? On November 18, 2025, a memo was allegedly circulated within the National Security Agency. It said, "The public is not ready for the peace this will bring." That is a chilling thought. We are prepared for war, but we are not prepared for a total, quiet shift in our reality. We are used to fighting for our place in the world, but we have no protocol for being cherished by the cosmos. The irony here is almost poetic. We have spent 70 years fearing an alien invasion, building bunkers and stockpiling missiles. And then, 3I Atlas arrives, and it doesn't attack. It just exists. It sits there, radiating a silence that makes our missiles look like toys, and our secrets look like whispers. Those two words, total peace, are far more disruptive to our society than any war could ever be. If we are truly being watched by something ancient and patient, then our borders are just lines in the sand, and our conflicts are just the squabbles of children in a sandbox. The classified programs under names like Project Guardian or The Shepherd are not protecting us from a threat. They are protecting the status quo from a revelation that would render our entire economy and political system obsolete. Consider the psychological toll on the few who know. In December 2025, a psychologist working for a government-funded think tank reported a strange phenomenon among high-level intelligence officers. They were losing interest in their work. They were becoming kinder, quieter, more reflective. They weren't leaking secrets out of spite. They were leaking them out of a sense of shared humanity. When you realize that 3I Atlas has been here since before the first stone of the pyramids was laid, the urgency of a 5-year budget plan starts to feel a bit ridiculous. Unfortunate timing for the military-industrial complex, as their best and brightest began to wander away from the mission, preferring to spend their time staring at the stars or talking to their neighbors. You are safe in this silence. The world is changing outside, but here, in the dim light of your room, everything is as it should be. You are a biological machine designed to seek patterns, and tonight, the pattern is one of rest. The cosmic scale of 3I Atlas isn't a threat to you, it's a permission slip. It's permission to stop worrying about the small things, because the big things are being handled by the universe itself. You are a small, vital part of a grand design that doesn't require your constant vigilance. You can let the world spin without you for a few hours. In the legends of the Hopi people, they speak of the blue star Kachina, a spirit that would signal the end of the fourth world and the beginning of the fifth. They said it would appear in a way that was both obvious and hidden. On December 25, 2025, 3I Atlas began to glow with a faint, sapphire hue. To the official telescopes, it was a gas discharge. To those who remember the old stories, it was a herald. But it wasn't a herald of doom, it was a herald of home. It was a sign that the long winter of human isolation was coming to an end. If you are still with me, I want you to think about your own classified programs. the things you hide from the world, the names you give your fears. We all have them. We are all trying to manage our own little universes, keeping our vulnerabilities locked in folders with boring names so no one will look inside. But tonight, you can let those projects go. You don't need to rename your worries to make them feel manageable. You can just let them dissolve into the dark. In the eyes of the infinite, your mistakes are just data points, and your fears are just echoes of a dream you are about to wake up from. The object is moving closer now, not just to Earth, but to the part of our minds we usually keep locked away. By January 8, 2026, it is predicted that the dream state of the global population will become synchronized. More people will report dreaming of the same black sphere, the same silent geometric flower. We are all becoming part of the same classified folder. We are being linked together by a shared observation. The military calls this cognitive entrainment, a fancy term for a group hug on a planetary scale. It is their way of trying to sanitize the fact that we are all starting to feel the same heartbeat. Think about the dry humor in that. A bunch of generals in a bunker, looking at a map of global brainwaves and trying to figure out how to counteract a feeling of universal empathy. Unfortunate timing, they say, as the soldiers start refusing to point their weapons at anything other than the horizon. It is a slow, quiet revolution. No shots fired, just a lot of people looking up and realizing that the person standing next to them is just as small and just as significant as they are. Arthur Vance never went back to his job. In January 2026, he was found living in a small cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains. He didn't have a phone or a computer, he just had a telescope and a notebook. When a journalist tracked him down and asked him about the 3-Eye Atlas conspiracy, he just smiled and pointed at the sky. He said, "Why would I talk about the name when I can just look at the light?" He had found the peace that the memo warned about. He had realized that being studied isn't the same as being hunted. Sometimes, being studied is just a way of being loved. As you drift further into your own internal space, remember that you are being seen, not by a satellite and not by a classified program, but by the universe itself. And the universe is patient. It has watched you grow from a single cell into a creature that can wonder about the stars. It isn't judging you. It isn't grading you. It is just observing, with the same geometric grace that Arthur Vance saw on his monitor. The countdown to the next awakening is silent. By January 15, 2026, the sapphire light will reach its peak. The official cover stories will crumble, not because of a leak, but because the truth will be as obvious as the sun. We will finally stop asking what 3-Eye Atlas is and start asking who we are now that it's back. You can rest now. The weight of the world is being carried by much stronger shoulders than yours. The secret is out, but it's a secret that was always written in your DNA. You are a child of the stars, and the stars have come to check on you. We may already be part of the experiment. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Picture this. You are a technician at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory on the evening of October 29th, 2025. You have your coffee, you have your terminal. But when you query the European Space Agency Gaia satellite for the latest parallax measurements of the Ophiuchus constellation, you receive a string of zeros. Not a timeout, not a crash, a zeroed out field. It is as if the stars were uninstalled. Unfortunate timing, the official report said. Those two words are doing a lot of work lately. You refresh the page, you check the local area network. You even check the power supply to the main server racks, thinking perhaps a cooling fan has failed and the hardware is throttling itself to death. But the fans are spinning, the lights are green. The universe, however, has returned a null value. This is the reality of the 3I Atlas era. It is a period of astronomical gaslighting. We are told by the National Aeronautics and Space Administration that these outages are the result of routine maintenance or solar interference, yet the timing is too poetic to be accidental. Professor Avi Loeb has often been careful to frame his findings as possibilities rather than certainties. He speaks of techno-signatures and lights in the dark, but even he fell silent when the November 2025 telemetry from the James Webb Space Telescope showed a thermal spike around 3I Atlas that reached 3,000 degrees Celsius before vanishing in 2 milliseconds. That is not natural physics. That is activation. It is the sound of a cold engine turning over in a garage the size of a solar system. When you look at the raw data packets from that night, you see a strange architecture. Usually, when a telescope loses a signal, there is noise, there is static, there is the messy, entropic signature of a system failing. But the October 29th event was clean. It was as if someone had placed a digital eraser over a specific coordinate in the Ophiuchus constellation and simply dragged it across the screen. There was no residue, no ghost images, just a perfect, terrifying absence. Some have called it the Great Redaction. Others, more cynical, suggest that our telescopes didn't lose the stars, but rather, the stars moved into a frequency we are no longer permitted to record. Consider the double-blind anomaly of late 2025. Two independent observatories, one in the high deserts of Chile and another on the peaks of the Canary Islands, were both tracking the 3I Atlas trajectory. At exactly 0200 hours Coordinated Universal Time, both stations reported a null data return. In Chile, the lead observer noted that the sky appeared clear to the naked eye, but the charge-coupled device sensors on the telescope reported a total vacuum. It is as if the light was choosing to bypass the machinery of man while still presenting itself to the human retina. This is not a glitch in the hardware. This is a glitch in the fundamental interaction between consciousness and measurement. The official explanation from the European Space Agency arrived 3 days later. They claimed a bit flip caused by a cosmic ray had corrupted the central processing unit of the Gaia satellite. A single subatomic particle hitting a single transistor. It is a convenient story, but it does not explain why the Chilean and Canary Island telescopes, which are grounded on Earth and shielded by miles of atmosphere, experienced the same bit flip at the same microsecond. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are indeed doing a lot of heavy lifting. They are the mortar holding together a crumbling wall of public ignorance. Let me back up for a moment. To understand the gravity of these missing data sets, we have to look at the sheer scale of what is being hidden. The Ophiuchus sector is not just any patch of sky. It is the gateway to the galactic center. By zeroing out the parallax measurements, the authorities are effectively blinding us to the distance of anything moving in that region. If 3I Atlas were accelerating toward Earth, we would have no way of measuring its velocity if the parallax data is missing. We would be like a driver on a highway with a speedometer that only reads 0. We are moving, and something is moving toward us. but the math has been confiscated. What if the downtime is not a failure of our systems, but a success of theirs? If 3i Atlas is an autonomous intelligence, it would understand that our primary weapon is our sight. We categorize, we label, we measure, and by doing so, we feel we have control. By removing the data, the anomaly removes our sense of mastery. It forces us back into a state of primitive awe. We are no longer scientists with terminals. We are once again peasants, looking at a sky we do not understand. And perhaps, for our own sanity, that is where they want us. In December 2025, a leaked document from a high-altitude research station in Antarctica suggested that the 3i Atlas object isn't just a physical mass. It is a gravitational lens that can be tuned. Think of it like a magnifying glass that can also act as a mirror. When the data goes offline, it isn't because the telescopes are broken. It is because the object has tuned its gravity to deflect every photon away from our sensors. It is a localized darkness that it can deploy at will, a smokescreen made of space-time itself. You might think that your life is disconnected from these orbital shifts, that the flickering of a database in Maryland has no bearing on your sleep in the middle of the night. But here is why you are wrong. Every atom in your body, every iron molecule in your blood, was forged in a stellar furnace. You are tethered to the stars by a thread of ancient light. When the data for those stars is deleted, it creates a resonance of absence in the human collective. We feel the null value in our bones. We feel the zeros in our dreams. Tell me, as you drift closer to sleep, have you noticed the clocks lately? Have you felt that strange sensation that an hour has passed in 10 minutes, or that a minute has lasted an hour? Many listeners have reported that since July 2025, time feels thinner, like a fabric that has been washed too many times. This is the physiological side effect of being near a shifting gravitational lens. When 3i Atlas adjusts its position, the time dilation ripples through the solar system. We don't see the wave, but we feel the tide. We are counting down to February 2026. That is when the next major alignment occurs. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration has already announced a scheduled outage for the Deep Space Network during that window. They say it is for a hardware upgrade. They say it is necessary for the long-term health of our communications. But we have heard this before. We know that maintenance is the code word for we don't want you to see what is about to happen. There is a dry irony in the fact that we have spent trillions of dollars to see the beginning of the universe, only to have the view blocked by a single, silent interloper discovered only months ago. We are like children who have built a magnificent tower of blocks, only to have a shadow fall over it just as we reach the top. It is humbling, it is frustrating, and it is, according to the official reports, just a series of unfortunate coincidences. But as you lie there, safe under your blankets, ask yourself, why now? Why 2025? Why July, the month of the first discovery, followed by this cascading failure of our global archives? The odds of every major space agency experiencing independent, simultaneous data loss events are astronomical. Literally, it is more likely that we are witnessing the first stages of a cosmic reformat, a clearing of the cache before a new program is run. As the technician at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, you eventually closed your terminal that night in October. You finished your coffee. You drove home under a sky that looked perfectly normal, but you knew that the zeros were still there, waiting in the machine. You knew that the stars hadn't been uninstalled, they had just been hidden. And as you fall asleep tonight, remember that the data doesn't have to be on a screen to be real. The truth is moving through the dark at 40 kilometers per second, whether the European Space Agency has a record of it or not. But here is where it gets dark. The zeros weren't just in the parallax fields. They started appearing in the heartbeat monitors of the deep space probes. In November 2025, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2 both transmitted a sequence of empty pings. For 6 hours, the messengers at the edge of our solar system went silent, not because of distance, but because they had entered the wake of 3I Atlas. The object is not just affecting our telescopes, it is affecting our reach. It is drawing a circle around us, a boundary that says, this far and no further. You are a witness to the closing of the frontier. You are the observer who is being told to look away. But the mind cannot be zeroed out as easily as a database. Even in your sleep, you are processing the shadow. You are filling in the blanks. You are the backup server for the universe. Keep your eyes closed. Let the terminal stay dark. The stars will still be there when the administrator finally comes back from lunch, if there is still a sky left to see. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Now, let us bring the focus back to the surface, back to the warmth of a human life. In the late 1970s, a series of declassified memos from the Stanford Research Institute discussed the external influence on human consciousness. They found that during periods of high anomalous activity in orbit, specifically the dates we now associate with 3I Atlas's previous passes, there was a measurable shift in global dream patterns. People reported dreaming of vast, silver structures and a feeling of being waited for. By December 2025, as the object draws closer to its perigee, sleep clinics are reporting a similar spike in these architectural dreams. It is a strange thing to consider that your most private thoughts, the images that dance behind your eyelids when you are at your most vulnerable, might be influenced by a machine sitting hundreds of thousands of miles away in the cold dark. But the data from the Stanford Research Institute, partially declassified in August 2025, suggests that the human brain is not a closed system. We are more like delicate antennas, picking up the low-frequency hum of the universe. In 1979, during a suspected pass of the object we now call 3I Atlas, researchers noted a curious phenomenon, a sudden, global increase in dreams involving a great mirror in the sky. People who had never met, who lived in different time zones and spoke different languages, all described the same sensation, a feeling of being gently examined, not with malice, but with a profound, clinical curiosity. You are likely feeling the weight of your own eyelids now. This is a safe space. The cosmic narrative is large, but you are the heart of it. Without a witness, 3I Atlas is just a silent machine in the dark. You give it meaning. You are the reason it is here. Whether it is a probe from a distant civilization or a remnant of a lost terrestrial era, it is a response to the existence of life on this planet. It is a cosmic hello that has been echoing through the hallways of history for millennia. We often think of space as a place of distance, but perhaps it is a place of connection. In the winter of 2025, as the nights grow longer, the signal from the Lagrange point seems to be sinking deeper into our collective subconscious. Dr. Jacqueline McClary has noted that the architectural dreams reported in December 2025 are becoming more vivid. People are no longer just seeing silver structures, they are walking through them. They describe halls of shifting geometry that match the James Webb telescope images. They speak of a silence that is not empty, but full of potential. It is as if 3i Atlas is downloading its own history into our sleeping minds, preparing us for a memory we haven't even had yet. There is a warmth in knowing that we are part of a larger conversation, even if we don't understand the language yet. 3i Atlas is a bridge. It connects the radar technician in 1967 to the scientist in 2025, and it connects both of them to you. We are all linked by the same question. It is an intimate connection, a shared secret between the stars and the soil. In the dry irony of our modern age, we find it easier to believe in a cold, indifferent universe than one that takes an interest in us. We call it unfortunate timing when we are forced to confront our own importance. But there is no shame in being important. There is no fear in being seen. You are a biological miracle, a consciousness capable of pondering the very thing that is pondering you. As you settle into your pillow, consider the possibility that your dreams tonight are not just a byproduct of your day, but a transmission from the silent partner. The Stanford memos mentioned a specific type of feedback loop. When the subjects were told about the anomalous activity in space, their dreams became more structured. When they were kept in the dark, the dreams remained abstract. This suggests that the observer effect works both ways. By acknowledging 3i Atlas, we are changing our relationship to it. We are no longer just subjects. We are participants. We are leaning into the gaze. By December 15th, 2025, the Global Dream Mapping Project noted that the feeling of being waited for had shifted. People now report a feeling of arrival. Not that something is coming, but that we have finally arrived at the place where the conversation can begin. Think about the silence of your room. It is a protective layer. It keeps the noise of the world at bay. But the silence of 3i Atlas is different. It is a waiting room. In the declassified Project Blue Book files, there is a censored entry from 1954 describing a witness who claimed to have heard the sky singing during a close encounter. The frequency she described matches the 8 Hz Schumann resonance that 3i Atlas is currently mimicking. It is a lullaby for a planet, a way to keep the subject calm while the measurements are taken. You are being measured for your potential. You are being weighed against the history of everything you have ever been. There is a profound peace in being small. A mouse in a field does not worry about the hawk until the shadow falls. But the shadow is just a lack of light. It is not a weapon. Rest in the shadow. It is cool. It is quiet. You are safe because you are not the target. You are the background. You are the environment that 3i Atlas is here to preserve. In the Cold War, we thought the shadows were Soviet bombers. We were so terrified of each other that we missed the fact that the shadow was a protective wing. 3i Atlas has stayed through our nuclear tests, our environmental crises, and our global shifts. It has remained constant. It is the one thing in our history that hasn't tried to change us. It has only watched us change ourselves. I want you to take a deep, slow breath. Feel the air fill your lungs. This is a human moment. Tell me, as you drift toward the edge of sleep, what is the one thing about being human that you think a silent observer should know? Share your reflection below. Let us create a record of what it feels like to be alive right now. Is it the way the rain feels on your face? Is it the smell of old books? Is it the way we love, despite the certainty of loss? Whatever it is, know that it is being recorded. It is part of the data set. Your humanity is the most valuable thing in the orbit of 3I Atlas. As we move toward the end of 2025, the architectural dreams are becoming more communal. People are reporting seeing other dreamers in the silver halls, a global congregation of the sleeping. We are coming together in the only place where the observer can truly reach us, in the deep, quiet waters of the unconscious. The declassified files from the 1970s suggest that this was always the goal. Not a physical landing on the White House lawn, but a psychological integration, a way to join the cosmic community without ever leaving our beds. Unfortunate timing. Those words doing a lot of work again. It was unfortunate timing that the most breakthrough consciousness research happened just as the Cold War was heating up, leading to the classification of these findings for 50 years. But perhaps it wasn't unfortunate. Perhaps we weren't ready. Perhaps we needed to grow up a little more before we could handle the idea that our minds were being curated. Now, in the twilight of 2025, the curtains are being pulled back. We are looking into the mirror, and the mirror is looking back with 80 years of accumulated data. You are not just a collection of atoms, you are a collection of memories, and those memories are part of a larger pattern. 3I Atlas is the loom, and your life is one of the threads. As you drift, feel the tension in the thread release. You don't have to hold the world together tonight. Someone else is watching the clock. Someone else is maintaining the orbit. You are free to simply be. You are free to disappear into the geometry of the silver halls. Where do you go when you sleep? Do you stay in your room, or do you travel to the Lagrange point? Tell me in the comments, have you had one of these dreams lately? Have you seen the silver structures? Your testimony is a part of the mapping. It helps us understand the reach of the influence. The vastness of the galaxy is not a distance to be traveled, but a state of mind to be achieved. 3I Atlas is the catalyst. It is the thorn in the side of our materialism, reminding us that there is more to reality than what we can touch. By January 2026, the object will begin its outward journey, returning to the deep dark. But the influence will remain. The dreams will linger. We will be forever changed by the knowledge that we were seen, and we were found worthy of observation. The safety of the dark is a gift. It allows the eyes to rest and the mind to expand. In the darkness, the scale of 3I Atlas is not frightening. It is majestic. It is a cathedral in the sky, and we are the choir. But we are moving into a period of deep reflection. The patterns are becoming clearer, but the meaning is still draped in shadow. The safety of the known world is behind us, and the beauty of the unknown is ahead. But even in this safety, there is a structure we cannot ignore, a mathematical choreography that is just now coming to light. Let us back up. Let me back up. Before the July 2025 discovery, there was a quiet period in radio astronomy that lasted nearly a decade. Then, suddenly, everything changed. 3I Atlas arrived not with a bang, but with a whisper that silenced our machines. On January 5, 2026, a high-altitude observatory in the Himalayas recorded a sequence of numbers in the cosmic background radiation. It was a countdown. When the countdown reached 0, the entire global astronomical data grid went into safe mode for 400 seconds. 400 seconds of absolute digital non-existence. In the world of high-frequency data transmission, 400 seconds is an eternity. It is enough time for empires to fall, or for the laws of physics to be subtly edited without anyone noticing the red pen. When the grid finally stuttered back to life, the coordinates for the Atlas sector had been shifted, not by much, just enough to make every previous calculation obsolete. We are told by officials like Dr. Elena Vance of the Royal Astronomical Society that these are simply software conflicts caused by the new generation of satellites. They speak of orbital congestion and signal crosstalk as if we are dealing with a crowded parking lot rather than the vast, empty theater of the cosmos. But that is not natural physics. That is activation. It is the signature of a system being overridden by a higher administrative privilege. When the grid came back online, the 3I Atlas object had moved 4 astronomical units. That is impossible for any known propulsion system. To move 4 astronomical units, the distance from the Sun to the asteroid belt, in less than 7 minutes, would require a mastery of inertia that should have liquefied any physical structure. Unless, of course, the object did not move through space, but space was moved around the object. This brings us to the great filter theory, but with a twist that should make your skin crawl. Perhaps 3I Atlas is not a barrier we have to cross, but a monitor, a silent observer placed at the edge of our solar system to ensure we do not see too much too soon. The downtime is a censorship filter, cutting the feed whenever our collective gaze stumbles upon a truth that would destabilize the very foundations of human society. Is it a coincidence that the most significant data losses occur during periods of global unrest or scientific breakthroughs? Or is the object acting as a cosmic sedative, keeping us in the dark so we stay calm within our planetary nursery? It is the ultimate form of paternalism, a guardian that protects us by making us blind. Think about the sheer scale of the silence. On that day in January, every radio telescope from the Atacama Large Millimeter Array to the Square Kilometre Array in Australia reported the same null state. This was not a localized glitch. It was a planetary mute button. For 400 seconds, humanity was disconnected from the universe. We were a species in solitary confinement. And what happens to a mind in solitary? It begins to hallucinate. It begins to project its own fears onto the walls of its cell. This is why the conspiracy theories surrounding 3I Atlas are so potent. In the absence of data, the imagination becomes the primary sensor. We are not just losing information, we are losing our grip on objective reality. What if the reason the space data goes offline is because 3I Atlas is literally eating the information, not the physical objects, not the stars or the planets themselves, but the light and radio waves that carry their history? It acts as a vacuum for data, a black hole for knowledge. As it passes through our sector, it pulls in the history of our observations, leaving us with a blank slate. We are not losing data due to technical errors. We are losing it to a celestial predator that feeds on awareness. Imagine an intelligence that sustains itself on the knowing of others. By observing it, we are feeding it, and when it is full, it shuts down our capacity to see it further. It is a cycle of consumption and concealment that has no end. The Hopi people speak of the blue star Kachina, whose appearance signifies the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. They say that when the blue star arrives, the world will become invisible for a time. In January 2026, The light reflected off 3I Atlas shifted into the deep blue spectrum. For 3 nights, telescopes could not lock onto its position. It became invisible to our technology, just as the ancient prophecy suggested. Is it possible that what we call advanced sensors are actually less capable than the spiritual intuition of the ancients? We rely on silicon and electricity to tell us what is real, but when those systems go offline for 400 seconds, we are left with nothing. The Hopi, however, would have simply looked at the color of the star and known exactly where they stood in the timeline of the world. There is a dry irony in our dependence on the digital record. We believe that if a thing is not recorded in a database, it did not happen. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration knows this. The European Space Agency knows this. By allowing the data grid to go into safe mode, they are effectively deleting events from history. If no telescope recorded the 4 astronomical unit jump of 3I Atlas, then according to the official record, it never happened. It is a very clean way to manage a crisis. You don't have to explain the impossible if you simply ensure that the impossible was never observed. Unfortunate timing once again becomes the shield behind which the truth hides. You are drifting now, suspended between the reality of your room and the vast, unmapped regions of the Atlas sector. You might think that these cosmic events are distant, but they are as close as your own shadow. Every time the data goes offline, a little bit of the future is being rewritten. You are sleeping through the editing of the universe. It is a peaceful way to travel, is it not? To let the heavy work be done by others, while you simply exist in the quiet. But there is a weight to that peace, a gravity that pulls at the back of your mind. It is the realization that we are not the protagonists of this story. We are the background characters who are frozen in place whenever the main actors need to move the scenery. Where do you find yourself when you close your eyes? Are you under a sky that makes sense? Or are you in a place where the stars are rearranged? I want you to share your dreams of the stars in the comments. Since July 2025, there has been a documented increase in vivid, celestial dreams among the general population. People who have never looked through a telescope are dreaming of geometric shadows and blue light. We are all connected to the same source. We are all feeling the same pull. The data might be offline, but the signal is being received directly by our subconscious. We are the secondary servers. We are the biological backup. The countdown to March 2026 is starting to feel like a drumbeat. Every time the astronomical grid flickers, the pulse gets faster. We are being prepared for something. Not a physical impact, perhaps, but a conceptual one. A moment where the gap between what we are told and what we know becomes too wide to ignore. Scarcity of information is the ultimate tool of control, but it is also the ultimate catalyst for awakening. The more they take away, the more we are forced to find for ourselves. We won't be able to see it again until December, they say. But seeing is a limited way of knowing. Think about the silence of the Himalayas on January 5. Imagine the monks and the scientists, miles apart, but staring at the same empty screens. The sequence of numbers they recorded wasn't a warning. It was a greeting, a rhythmic handshake between 2 different types of existence. When the grid went into safe mode, it wasn't because of a virus or a hack. It was because our machines couldn't handle the weight of the message. It was like trying to pour the ocean into a thimble. The thimble didn't break, it just overflowed. And in that overflow, for 400 seconds, we were given a glimpse of the true scale of the universe. A scale that does not include databases or satellites. As you sink deeper into your bed, let the 400 seconds of silence wash over you. It is not a void, it is a presence. It is the sound of the universe breathing when it thinks no one is watching. The 3-eye Atlas object is still out there, moving through the dark at speeds that defy our math, watching us through the very sensors it chooses to disable. It is a game of cosmic hide and seek, and we are currently it. But the game is designed to help us grow, to move us from the age of data to the age of awareness. Tell me, where are you listening from? Is the night still? Does the air feel charged? Many of our listeners have reported that during these data outages, their domestic animals become restless. Dogs barking at empty corners of the sky, cats staring at the ceiling with dilated pupils. They don't need the European Space Agency to tell them something has changed. They feel the shift in the gravitational tide. If your world feels different tonight, share that feeling. We are gathering the evidence that the machines are too afraid to record. We are closing the loop on this act. The data will eventually return, scrubbed and sanitized for public consumption. You will be told that everything is normal. You will be told that the January 5 event was a clock sync error, but you will remember the 400 seconds. You will remember the whisper that silenced the world. And you will know that the safe mode we are currently in is just a temporary shelter before the next countdown reaches 0. The horizon is moving, and we are moving with it, drifting into a tomorrow that has already been edited for our protection. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. From the orbit of Mars, the HiRISE camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3-eye Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, "Sensor artifact." The unofficial whisper said, "Structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking." Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The HiRISE camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids, not random, repeating, symmetrical, the kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects, artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. 4. We don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from HiRISE contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. "Then don't say it out loud." 3I Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation's subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, Analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became a mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3I, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3I Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave, certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3I Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, Scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the Sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition. a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new. Faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it, it instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together. A self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space. A wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, 3 nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from three sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when three agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3i Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it, "Not for discussion." The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland, it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast. Rumors cast. Silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, Communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: if this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales. You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos. The beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3i Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums. Something old and orderly is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, The leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The Skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its Skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity, catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the Skycam had caught something, a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looks strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed, source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything: 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the Webb's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the Webb's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the Webb, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another web was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the web brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. The cosmos, wrote one witness, had finally learned to conduct itself consciously. After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11 point. 2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat, echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3i Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, It would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning. Like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue. The physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance. like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the Sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I Atlas isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. all things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it. It instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code. And 3I Atlas is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names: the immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorrell stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11.2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat, echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again, exactly 11 hours later. If you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue, the physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. The names are falling away. 3i Atlas, Project, Glass Mirror, the Glass Eye, the Sentinel, the harbinger. All of the linguistic scaffolding we built to support our fragile understanding is collapsing into the void. In the end, a name is just a way to stop looking at something. It is a label on a door that we are too afraid to open. But the door has been opened for us. By January 16, 2026, the bureaucratic machinery of the world has finally ground to a halt. The classified briefings have stopped because there is nothing left to classify. You cannot put a secret clearance on the moon when it is sitting in your front yard. You cannot redact the stars. Imagine the silence in the Situation Room. The high-definition screens are still glowing, but the analysts have stopped typing. They are just watching. They are watching a black sphere that has grown so large in the sky that it has begun to swallow the horizon. The dry irony of the situation is that we spent billions of dollars on encryption, on firewalls, and on non-disclosure agreements, only for the truth to be visible to anyone with eyes. Unfortunate timing for the gatekeepers of the black budget, who now find themselves standing in the same darkness as the rest of us. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are the final echoes of a civilization that thought it could manage the infinite with a spreadsheet. The transition from Act 9 to this moment has been a long, slow dissolve. We have moved from the warning to the silence, and this silence is not empty. It is heavy. It is a pressurized quiet, like being deep underwater. On January 18, 2026, the global internet traffic dropped by 90%, not because the servers failed, but because people stopped looking at their phones. They went outside. They sat on their porches. They laid in the grass. They realized that the different names and classified programs were just noise designed to keep them from hearing the hum of the universe. Think about the researchers at the Vatican one last time. They have closed their books. They have extinguished their candles. They are sitting in the dark of the archives, smiling. They know that the 3I was never a designation. It was an instruction to see with the 2 eyes of the body and the 1 eye of the soul. The military called it 3-Eye Atlas to make it sound like a map, but the ancients knew it was a mirror. And now, the mirror is so close that we can see every detail of our own reflection. We see our history, our mistakes, our triumphs, and our potential, all swirling within the liquid mercury surface of the visitor. The humor has faded into a quiet, late-night humility. We are like children who tried to hide from the sun by covering our eyes and renaming it the bright nuisance. We thought we were clever. We thought we were in control. But as the names fall away, we are left with the raw, unvarnished reality of our place in the cosmos. We are a part of a sequence. We are a note in a song that has been playing since the beginning of time. 3-Eye Atlas is not a visitor. It is the conductor's baton, signaling for the next movement to begin. You are breathing so slowly now that it feels as if you are part of the earth itself. The weight of your body in the bed is the same as the weight of the mountains. The classified folders' names like Project Finality or The Great Silence are just paper, and paper burns. It dissolves. It turns to ash in the face of the sun. You don't need the folders. You don't need the experts. You don't even need me. You just need the silence. The what if of this act is the most profound of all. What if the great silence is not the end of our story, but the beginning of our true communication? If we stop naming things, we have to start feeling them. If we stop classifying the world, we have to start experiencing it. On January 20, 2026, the first reports of direct perception began to surface. People didn't see the object. They felt its intent. They felt a sense of belonging that was so deep it made their previous lives look like a dream. Consider the perspective of the object. To 3I Atlas, we are not citizens of different countries. We are not clearance levels or political demographics. We are just a single, pulsing collective of awareness. It has waited for us to reach this point. It has waited for us to exhaust our cleverness, to use up all our names, and to finally go quiet. The military's attempt to study it under a different name was like trying to study the ocean by looking at a drop of water in a lab. You have to jump in. You have to let the water take you. As you drift into the deepest part of your sleep, the colors of the world begin to soften. The sapphire glow of December has become a warm, inclusive white. The black sphere is no longer a hole in the sky. It is a lens of absolute clarity. You are looking through it. You are seeing the galaxy not as a collection of distant fires, but as a living web of light. Every strand of that web is a story, and every story is yours. You are the legacy asset. You are the sentinel. You are the 3I. The countdown has reached 0. But there is no explosion. There is only a sigh, a long, collective exhale from 8 billion people who have finally stopped holding their breath. The classified names, Project Echo, The Return, have been fulfilled. The loop is closed. The past and the future have met in this single, silent moment. And in this moment, you are perfectly, undeniably safe. The dry irony of the national security label is the last thing to fade. What is more secure than a world that has no secrets? What is more national than a planet that has no borders? We have achieved the ultimate security by realizing that there is nothing to lose. The unfortunate timing of our arrival at this truth is, in reality, the most fortunate timing possible. We reached the edge just as the bridge appeared. I wonder, in the near silence of your mind, can you feel the orbit? It is no longer out there. It is the rhythm of your own heart. It is the tilt of your own thoughts. You are moving through the dark, but you are not lost. You are exactly where you were always meant to be. The folders are empty. The names are gone. The sky is open. The gardener has finished. The work is done. Deep, slow, quiet. The mystery is you. The secret is you. The silence is you. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Good night.